Computer-generated chess problem 2900 by the computationally creative computer program Chessatica, the only one of its kind that the world has ever known. Okay, so white has got a king and 3 pieces. Black has a king and 2 pawns, but those 2 pawns are very and uncomfortably close to promotion. What should white do here? Perhaps king to g3? Now, if black promotes to a queen, bishop to g2 check, king to g1, and knight to f3 checkmates. So, he underpromotes to a knight, king to h2. Now note that if the black knight moves away from the guard of the g2 square, the bishop will come there and give check. So for example, if knight to d3, bishop to g2 check, king to e1, and knight to f3 mates. So to last the longest, black has to play knight to f3 check. The bishop just captures the knight, the king moves to e1, knight to e4, black can try anything, maybe even another under promotion. By the way, if black promotes to queen, knight to c2 is mate, so he under promotes again to a knight, king to g2, knight to e3 check, king to g1, knight to d1, and knight to c2 mates. That's on the 7th move. Now that in itself requires some analysis. But would it surprise you to learn that there's an even faster way for white to win? Let's take a look at that variation. Okay, so as you can see from the engines, there is a mate in 7, but there's only one mate in 5. And that is king to h3. Now as before, if black promotes to a queen, bishop to g2, king to g1, and knight to f3 mates with a royal fork no less. So that won't work. But what about something else? What about no promotion at all? What about king to g1? What about that? Well, knight to f3 check. If king to f1, knight to e4, and whatever black promotes to, even a queen, knight to g3 mates. What about king to h1? Well, knight to d2 discovered check, king to g1, and knight captures pawn with mate. The pair of knights and bishop are really working well together here, aren't they? Okay, so the only way for black to last the longest is to underpromote to a knight. And here, interestingly, is bishop all the way at the corner of the board on a8 to h1. Wow, what a move. Now if knight to c2, bishop to g2 check, if king to e1, knight to f3 mates, and if king to g1, knight to f3, or even either knight to e2 mates. So black has to be careful here, king to g1. And now here, either knight can move to e2, giving check. If king to f1, knight to g3 check, king to g1, knight on the d file to e2 mate. And if king captures bishop, this is a perfectly viable variation for black to continue with. White only has a pair of knights now basically, which makes it very difficult if not impossible to win, especially against a knight and a pawn that is just one step from promotion, mind you. Knight to g3 check, king to g1, and my goodness, knight on the d file to e2 checkmate, with the pawn on f2 blocking the king slide square. Let's take a look at that again. King to h3, black underpromotes to a knight, bishop to h1. Would you have seen this move? What happens, by the way, if bishop moves, let's say, to b7? Well, then this allows knight to f3, and the bishop cannot access the g2 square. Do you see why? Okay, so bishop to h1, king to g1. Either knight can move to e2 because the point is to get to g3. So knight to e2 check, white sacrifices the bishop, knight to g3 check, king moves back to g1, and knight on the d file to e2 with checkmate. Can you believe a computer composed this all on its own? Believe it.